This was not only to react for the pandemic, but to prepare for the pandemic.
This summer, the federal government set aside $8 billion in CARES Act money for tribal governments across America to help their members through the coronavirus pandemic. It's a lot of money for the tribes to distribute, and it goes beyond providing just a stimulus check. Our reporter Tony Russell tells us tonight how some tribes in Oklahoma are using the emergency relief funds to provide food for their citizens.
Osage County, Oklahoma, home to the Osage Nation. This is their land, their pastures, their reservation, larger than the state of Rhode Island. And now their cattle are part of a long-term effort to keep the tribe fed during the pandemic.
I mean, the Osage Reservation is gigantic. It's 1.47 million acres. And many of our communities are in a food desert where their shopping options are limited to a dollar general type store. And with so few options to begin with, when the pandemic came in, it made things incredibly worse for these small towns.
When national brands had to shutter their meat processing factories because of coronavirus outbreaks, meat prices went up, and the availability for meats in stores became even more scarce in smaller communities. Tribes realized the pandemic was causing a major disruption in their food supply. James Wygant, an Osage citizen himself, was tapped to head the tribe's coronavirus task force.
And one of the first things that we realized was that people would go into grocery stores and there'd be nothing on the shelf, where the food that was there was 3 times what it used to cost.
Roughly $8 billion went directly to federally recognized tribes when the CARES Act was signed into law. The Osage Nation received $45 million in CARES Act funds. It's using a large chunk of it to address the food crisis by building a meatpacking facility in Hominy and a produce warehouse and fish farm in Pawhuska.
This national food system was so significantly disrupted that we came to the realization that Indian country needed to get in the driver's seat and take charge of filling the gaps in those tribal food systems.
Carly Griffith Hotfett, a Cherokee Nation citizen, is helping the Osage Nation ramp up its own food security system.
Those issues were really compounded in Indian country, and the coronavirus pandemic response didn't break anything, it just revealed things that were already broken.
As a result, the Osage Nation will now begin processing its own cattle, growing its own vegetables, and raising fish with these facilities.
And we wanted to have something that once this is all done with, that we have something to show for it. This is gonna fix a problem that we're facing right now, but in the future, it'll be an asset for the Osage people to be proud of.
Some tribes didn't receive their funds for several months after the CARES Act passed and are now working aggressively to meet a federal deadline to spend the money by the end of the year.
It was all hands on deck. You know, they say you're building the track as the train's rolling down the track. That's not what we were doing. We were building the airplane as it takes off. We had contracts in place, design contracts where it was just go get it done. This needs to be done now.
The investments that are made in rural areas in these food deserts are less. So that means that Osage citizens who are living in rural Osage County have less of an opportunity for selection. They have less of an opportunity to get a competitive retail price. And that's because we've seen disruption at the food system at the national level.
That's why the Osage Nation is investing in food production, while some tribes are reportedly spending all of their CARES Act funds on individual relief payments.
I'm heartened by the response in Indian country for tribes that have made agriculture and processing and production in their food systems a priority. So it's going to be really exciting.
A response that doesn't just provide a mirage in the food desert, but a sustainable source of affordable food for years to come, whether or not there's a pandemic.